Alright, developer log for September 2025. This is going to be a bit of a shorter developer log because I've not been able to do that much this month. It's one of those months where life just happens and I just didn't have full focus on the game. I guess it kind of offsets the amazing month I had last month, where I was able to do a lot of stuff. So the only two things I want to talk about is shadows and performance improvements with them, and also the work I'm doing on level 2 engineering for the update, for the demo, and for of course the final game. So right now I don't have a character shadow. I'm currently in the midst of making low resolution shadow meshes for all of the characters. Even though I'm probably not going to do it for the players, probably only going to be for all of the enemies. I'm gonna explain that later, but so yeah. This, you can see the shadow mesh is slightly different than the mesh I'm currently holding. That's because the shadow mesh is a lower resolution version of the high resolution mesh to improve shadow performance, because pretty much all of the GPU performance was going to shadows, and I want to improve that. So that's why I have at least finished all of the weapons. So all of the weapons now have a low resolution. There you also see the low resolution shadow mesh that is cast, while you see the high resolution mesh in front. And you can clearly see that there are some differences. Now, yeah, there are differences, but in the actual game, like when you're playing in the game, you're never really going to notice that the shadows are slightly different. I'm not gonna do it for the character because I was also planning to do it for the player character, but I've kind of left that out because I mean it's only one entity, the player character, and having to make separate shadow meshes for every single possible outfit combination is just going to be not possible. Like, I'm not going to be able to make. I mean, I can make it, but it's just not a worthwhile investment for developer time to make every single style of outfit. Make a shadow mesh for that, because the way I do it is like I have one shadow mesh. I don't have a shadow mesh for every separate item. I just have one shadow mesh for the entire character. Because the way shadow meshes work, so I will now quickly pick one of the shadow meshes. So the way I expected it to work is I thought you could give, just like how you could give LODs to models, I thought you could give here like a shadow mesh, like bind a shadow mesh to the item. Unfortunately, you can't do that. So the way you have to do it is you have to make a separate skeletal mesh instance. Just make sure it copies the animations of the main mesh and then also the same location. And then have it be invisible in the game, but then cast shadows. That's basically how it works. So for the character models for the enemies, I'm just going to make one shadow mesh for the entire character, even though that character consists of multiple skeletal meshes, and implement it that way. So that's also why it's kind of difficult to have like. Otherwise, I'm gonna have to if I need to have a dynamic for like different types of skeletal meshes, like the head mesh, the outfit mesh, the body mesh, the whatever mesh. I would have to make copies of all of those shadow assets, and that's just really annoying. Also, it would reduce CPU performance because the game just has to track way more skeletal mesh instances, which I don't want to do. So I only really want to have one skeletal mesh instance for shadows. I'm not gonna go deeper into it, but yeah. So yeah, here you can kind of see the example of like the very low resolution skeletal mesh just for shadow casting. So this is 408 triangles, whereas the normal resolution mesh is 12,000 triangles, and the LOD is 1,300. So it is even a factor smaller, a factor of 3 smaller than even the LOD mesh. So that's a very good performance improvement for shadows. That's pretty much all I want to do for shadows, so now we'll just show the level 2 map. So yeah, I reworking level 2 engineering. So just like the other one, the thing I'm doing is I'm mostly getting rid of all of the cramped hallways and replacing them with large battle arenas. So I want every map to be kind of unique, not just in looks, but also in the way it plays. So whereas the first map is a bit more hallway and is more of a hallway shooter, and here you will get more open arenas that open up. So yeah, here you can see the full new dynamic tile set in action. It looks great. I think it's a significant improvement over the old version. I think this is also a bigger improvement over this improvement from level 2 over the old version of level 2 is even bigger than the improvement of level 1 over the level 1 of the demo. So yeah, it looks great. It also plays, it's very fun to play. Like again, it's just way more verticality, way more open spaces, way more interesting geometry instead of just, you know, big cube rooms. Just more fun stuff, and that's basically it. That's just the developer log. Obviously, I've worked on a bunch of other stuff. I've worked on some and also some improvements on the animation performance. So I don't really have that ready to show, but what I've done is that enemies that are not visible to the player will now run at a much lower animation play rate. Now, if you know Unreal, you might think, why am I even running animations for things that I can't see? That's because there are some gameplay functionality that is bound to animations, such as not gameplay, but for example, footsteps. Footsteps rely on the animation playing. Right? So if I'm not looking at an enemy, if I would have the normal player of the normal animation optimization, the animation would simply stop playing and the character would no longer make footsteps. So that's why the animations of enemies still have to keep ticking, even if they're not visible. However, I've made it so that the tick rate will now go to, like, I think 10 FPS per second, which is still good enough to for footsteps, but it will basically, I mean, the animation normally runs at 60 FPS if you look at an enemy, and if you don't look at an enemy, the enemy animation FPS will basically go down to 10 FPS. Which basically means that all animations for enemies that are not seen will be improved by 6 times. So yeah, and that's pretty much all I wanted to say. Again, it was a bit of a boring developer log. I don't really have a lot to say. I hope the next one is going to be more interesting. I expect shadows to be done, and I also hopefully am mostly done with level 2. And then I will move to level 3, and then hopefully in like a month or 2 I can release the updated version of the demo. And that's it. Goodbye.